Hello? Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here, everyone, and welcome to the Wisconsin Book Festival. And we're here today to listen to Rebecca Fannin, the author of Silicon Heartland. My name is Adira Sunkara, and I'm the Director of Strategy and Innovative Ventures at WSF. WSF is a nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to fostering research, innovation, and entrepreneurship in the state of Wisconsin, and we work closely with the universities of Wisconsin to do this. So before we get started, I would like to thank the Madison Public Library Foundation, and all of our sponsors today for helping make this incredible celebration possible. A few housekeeping details. Please remember to silence your cell phone so that we don't interrupt our author while she's talking. We ask that you please share your experience, photos, etc. on social media, and you can use the hashtag Wisconsin Book Fest or WI Book Fest for doing so. And at the end of this, at the end of the talk, there are books for sale right outside this room that are being sold by a small local bookstore called Mystery to Me, and then our author will also be doing a book signing right outside. So with that, I am really excited to be here and to welcome Rebecca. Rebecca Fannin is a journalist, author, and a media entrepreneur who has covered global innovation for more than 20 years. She grew up in the Ohio Heartland and graduated from Ohio University. She began her career at the Dayton Journal-Herald, then from the reporter's cubicle at Crane Communications in Manhattan to the hottest .com magazine Red Herring in San Francisco. She ventured to Beijing, Shanghai, and became one of the first American journalists to document China's entrepreneurial rise. Inspired by the tech founders that she was interviewing, she formed her own venture called Silicon Dragon Ventures as a media and events group. During COVID, she added an online show featuring venture capitalists. She became a regular contributor to CNBC, and her articles have appeared in Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and Forbes. Her forward-looking books like Silicon Dragon, Startup Asia, and Tech Titans of China launched her as a commentator and public speaker. As a guest on BBC, Bloomberg, Fox News, NPR, and she's also a quoted expert in the New York Times. She has also spoken at the Brookings Institute, the Asia Society, and many universities, including Harvard, Yale, Oxford, and now UW-Madison. Silicon Heartland is an essential look at the regrowth of the American Midwest. In this book, she chronicles her return to America's heartland, revealing the dramatic entrepreneurial comeback that is transforming us from the Rust Belt to the Tech Belt. Now I will hand it over to Rebecca Fannin to tell us more about her journey that led to this remarkable and inspiring book.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Okay, this is the biggest audience I've had yet. Wow. But I'm very happy to be here in Madison, Wisconsin, because as I said to a fellow here in the audience, I traveled to all the rustiest places in doing the research for this book. And so Madison, Wisconsin is like a breath of fresh air after all these rusty places I've been to in doing the research and interviews for Silicon Heartland. So as you just heard, I have been on this tech innovation journey for quite some time, and this is my fourth book. So there may be a fifth, so stand by for that. But this one just came out this year, so it's got a lot of life left to it, and I am still tracking what's going on here in the Heartland. So let me tell you a little bit of how I got started on the Heartland as an innovation zone. I'd been tracking China for many years, and I had a first row seat to seeing China's entrepreneurial rise, and I interviewed people like Jack Ma of Alibaba when nobody knew who Jack Ma of Alibaba was, and many other of the tech entrepreneurs in China. Today, people know who those tech titans are, and my third book, Tech Titans of China, went into detail about how they grew up and became giants. So I had been going to China regularly probably 4 or 5 times a year, believe it or not, and about 100 trips overall. So I was beginning to know China pretty well, and almost better than the United States, because I was spending so much time there. But then COVID hit, right? COVID hit. I had a bunch of events all geared up to do in China, in Beijing and Hong Kong and Shanghai. Had to cancel all of them, cancel all my flights, and regroup in Silicon Valley, which is where I have a place today, and it's a great place to spot trends because it is the tech crossroads of the United States and also globally. So I began to witness this innovation bubbling up in the Heartland because I'm from the Heartland and I could see it and I saw it changing. But one of the reasons I decided to do this book is that in the New York Times, I was quoted as an expert on China on the business page. But on the front page of the New York Times was an article about Southern Ohio, the place where my parents went to high school, Medford, Ohio, the opioid capital of the nation. And I thought, how can this be? I still have relatives in Southern Ohio. How can this be the opioid capital? So anyhow, this launched me on this journey. I have a lot of curiosity. I have no fear about going out solo and documenting a lot of these trends by myself and driving by myself too. So I did that for about a year in doing the research for this book. But I want to tell you that to me, it was like a homecoming. After being away for so many years, I had escaped Southern Ohio for Manhattan and Silicon Valley and other frontiers. So coming back was this real homecoming, and I really felt it. This photo is my grandparents' farm in Southern Ohio. It's still there. And in fact, I spent a night there this summer on the book tour. Excuse me, I'm gonna get some water. The other photo, this is my mother's side of the family. This is my father's side of the family. That's northern Kentucky. They're on opposite sides of the Ohio River. This is the Appalachian Hills, foothills. It is poor. It is jobless. It has been in despair. And what I write about in the book is places like that that have an opportunity to come back. So that was an amazing experience, interviewing so many people who are in the midst of this transition, the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the investors, the mayors, the talent leaders. I interviewed them all, and I had this itinerary all set up. I mapped it out from Silicon Valley. First, I decided who I was going to interview, and I did preview interviews with them and got all their details down, and then I made this schedule, this itinerary of going out into the Heartland and interviewing these people one by one. And because it was COVID, we did almost all the interviews outside wearing masks. So it was kind of, but you know, it was great because everyone was available. Today, no one's available. You can't get these interviews. So the timing was really good. And actually, you know, I liken myself a little bit too. Everybody knows who this is, right? J.D. Vance, who also is a hillbilly like me, who wrote a book, but his book is much more famous than mine. And he got a movie out of it, and I've yet to get a movie out of it. But, you know, maybe someday, because the story is continuing. So the photo on the right is Zion Ridge, where the Fannin homestead is. I'm Fannin, and the Fannin homestead is up there on Zion Ridge in Kentucky, northern Kentucky. And it's on a mountaintop, and there's nothing else around, really, except some cattle and some cemeteries. Okay, so my journey took me from Dayton Journal-Herald. That's the Dayton Journal-Herald building is still standing in Dayton, Ohio. Barely. They ripped down every building around it. And this poor tragic story of a building where we used to, run down to the newsroom and see the newspapers roll off. They roll off every night. And then we would go to the bar next door and close out the daily news, the nightly news. And the next day was the next cycle. So that was a great experience at the Dayton Journal-Herald when I was just between my junior and senior year in college at OU. I wanted to stay on. I did not want to go back to college, but I did manage to go back and graduate, which my dad was very happy about because he's a professor at OU. All right, so then from Dayton, Ohio, as I said, I've got this adventuresome side to myself, and I'm a kind of a risk taker. So I moved to New York City, and and soon enough I bought a co-op apartment on Riverside Drive, and it was in a gentrifying neighborhood. So I've had some experience with gentrifying neighborhoods and towns, and that's the building right there from the vintage building, like 1910. It's very beautiful inside. But it was in a bad neighborhood. So after about 10 years of living there, I gave up on the neighborhood and moved out. So I moved south into Manhattan. I also began tracking what was happening in Silicon Valley in tech innovation, venture capital, and that opened up a whole new horizons for me. So Silicon Valley, that's the place, Burlingame, where I still have a place today. In fact, I'm going there on Sunday night. And then also China caught my eye because during the dot-com boom and the dot-com bust, if we're talking about technology here, right? You guys are interested in technology. So I was there during the dot-com boom where everything was, there was a tremendous amount of venture capital spending, and everyone was moving to dot-com after their names. But there was also the dot-com bust. And during the dot-com bust, the venture capitalists began looking to China as the next frontier, and to India. And so you may have heard of Silicon Valley Bank. Okay, Silicon Valley Bank took a bunch of these VCs, venture capitalists, over to China and India and introduced them. And before long, they had funds there, they had investments there, they had exits there. Exits are IPOs or M&A deals. And I was there, front row seat, documenting it. Okay, until COVID. And I have not been back to China since January 2020. But I am going again in about 2 weeks just to Hong Kong, not to mainland China. So this is a little bit about how I mapped out my itinerary, and that's the car I drove in, which is still running at 98,000 miles now. I put about 10,000 miles onto the car. And that's me at my publisher's office at the end of the trail. And my publisher is Charles Bridge Publishing, right next to the Charles River, very close to Harvard. And they did a great job with the book, and my editor was wonderful. And so I would recommend them. But they are in a former warehouse building, a place that has been renovated as a headquarters building now. And it's right next to the Charles River. So Charles Bridge Publishing was my publisher. Okay, now this is where we get into the economic trends and the population trends. And as I said, I went to all the rustiest places. So there they are, Dayton, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh. All of them declined, plus many more, but I just highlight these because these are major metros that have a tech future, I think. And I also, in my book, contrasted the poverty rates of many of these places. And as you can see, Columbus, poverty rate is not very high at all. Madison, same thing, not very high at all, because Madison is a high-income, high-educated place. But many of these cities, what's going on? Oh, thank you. Lost half of their population over the past 50 years when the factories went to China. You know, all these factories, you know, everyone went, GE went, Goodyear went, to the, you name it, they went to China. And now we are faced with this industrial meltdown, which, as you can see, the effect of the industrial meltdown. Not great. Blight. That picture is, by the way, I took all these photos too, so I'm not a photographer, but you know, it's not a bad photo. Gives you the story. Flint, you know, is weedy, very weedy. This is not just one instance. There's several blocks like this in Flint, and not to pick on Flint. There's several other places that are almost as bad, like Youngstown, like Gary, Indiana is worse. But anyhow, to show you what I think is factors that can lead to a place to become a boom town. These are the factors I think you've got to address. So you've got to address internet access. You know, you've got to address the cultural part of it, of diminished expectations. You know, the Midwest has a kind of an inferiority complex compared to Silicon Valley and Boston and Austin. And you've got all these other societal ills like poverty, drug addiction, crime. So the Heartland has a ton of challenges, and redoing these factories is another one. Look at this photo here. This is Detroit, and the weeds are growing out of this old automotive manufacturing company. And this is not, again, not isolated. This is in Detroit. You know, there's several of them like this. And which is, you know, when I was doing the research and seeing this close hand, I just felt like, wow, we let this happen, and we let these companies just leave these towns desolate, just broken. And that's not fair, I think. It's not fair. So I think companies have a social responsibility too, to the places that they are working in. So today, what do we need? We need a lot more retraining. You know, places like Madison can churn out these engineers that we need for the semiconductor plants that are moving in. We need 50,000 engineers. So how many engineers are there here? All right. Oh, she too. Okay, good. Because I was at Purdue University. One of the stops I made was at Purdue, and they're really big on semiconductors. With their new president, they have a semiconductor facility right on campus. So they are in Washington, D.C., parading this concept that we need 50,000 more trained engineers to deal with the new jobs, not the old jobs, not the old factory jobs, which are dull and boring and repetitious, and nobody wants them. And they're declining anyhow. So the backdrop is, what was really interesting about this is the Heartland story, I wove in the China story, because the backdrop of China getting ahead is, the backdrop to the Heartland getting ahead is China. The competition with China, the rivalry with China over superpower status, and we see this today with chips and advanced science and all the restrictions and the export restrictions. And so that is not going away. In fact, it's intensified quite a bit in the past few years. It used to be that Silicon Valley had a lot of China investment. There was a lot of cross-border investment, and there was cross-border investment in the Heartland from China, but not anymore, because we have put a stop to it, and China's put a stop to our VCs coming in as well. So the VC part of it is all unraveling and becoming split, so that there's a China part and a US part. So in my book, I talk about how the Heartland's rise can be a counterpoint to China. And we need it. We need it. Okay. So I was in Washington, D.C. recently, and there's Secretary Raimondo, who is very popular because her department, her Commerce Department, is doling out lots of money to the Heartland, to regional innovation hubs, overlooked places, places that need development. So, and there's a lot of new money going in right now. And there are big numbers to restore the Heartland to its former self, but in a new way. And I like to quote John Chambers, who said, we have to have the courage to change. There's a lot of places that don't have the courage to change. They don't want to move ahead. They're too comfortable. They don't want to face the future. And so I think this comment really resonated with me. And a couple other points that he made are right here. Disrupt or be disrupted. Now that's a message for the United States in our technology innovation and our scientific breakthroughs. Disrupt or be disrupted. And China's getting ahead on a lot of fronts. But the US still has a lead. Thank goodness. So, another quote from him. Explores the tech innovation frontier that was once a center of commerce but got left behind when it didn't adapt. So all of these places that I write about in the Heartland, they are all adapting in their own way. And they're using a number of these factors. Startups, venture capital, tech clusters, innovation hubs, tech parks, urban renewal, livability improvements. Sorry, it's been a long week. So, yes, and so I think Madison scores very high on many of these elements. Universities as anchors, big companies as anchors, tech clusters, tech specialization, heroes who can lead the way, entrepreneurial heroes who can lead the way and show others how to do it. That's what Silicon Valley has been so great at. We have people like Elon Musk, who is, considered our leading entrepreneur today, I think. Maybe some of you disagree, but I do think we need to see more of that Silicon Valley culture move into the Heartland. And these are the ingredients that matter. And I would also put diversity up there very high. Diversity, minority population, you need that because it encourages creativity. And that's part of the cultural element of this story that I really enjoyed writing about. I have a whole chapter on minority entrepreneurs and investors and the challenges that they face and how they are confronting and how they are dealing with the new opportunities. So on the culture front, I do want to point out too that the Rust Belt has grit, right? Grit, G-R-I-T, and has an abundance of it. And I don't think Silicon Valley has it that much. I don't think Boston has it that much. I don't think New York has it that much. New York's got a different kind of grit altogether. But Heartland has grit, and that's a big ingredient for success. Do not give up. Determination. I mentioned the diversity angle. Many of the places that I went, it was very much in your face, like the Black Lives Matter banner in Detroit, downtown. And when I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma is bringing back Black Wall Street. There's a lot of new energy going into Black Wall Street. So I visited there and went to their summit and spoke there. So I cannot emphasize this diversity, creativity angle enough. And I think the Heartland needs to be more aware of it, of giving more opportunities to minorities. Okay, sorry. Okay. Let me just let you absorb this chart for a second. what this shows you is the population gains, the score of innovation, and how the cities rank. And this is an annual survey that's done by CBRE. And you can see here the changes in 5 years. So you can see who's winning, who's getting ahead. Madison very high up. Look at that. Milwaukee, unfortunately, not so great. There's a big difference between Madison and Milwaukee. I spoke in Milwaukee earlier this summer at the Summerfest Tech. It was a great experience. But I think this chart, if you absorb it, is very meaningful. So one of the factors for the Heartland's prize is specialization by technology. So each of these places has its own specialty. Believe it or not, Youngstown, our former steel town, is very big in advanced manufacturing today and 3D printing. Well, they're trying to get very big in it, so there's a way to go still. But downtown Youngstown, there's the Youngstown Business Incubator, which is green lighting and bootstrapping startups in 3D manufacturing. And so I visited many of those entrepreneurs who were getting this kind of mentorship and getting this kind of investment from the Youngstown Business Incubator. And the Youngstown State University also has a whole big program, curriculum on advanced manufacturing. So one of the companies that I wrote about in the book is in the Youngstown area, a family-owned business. It's a foundry. And that foundry almost went under because the jobs were all going to, overseas where the cost of labor was lower. So it was only through his adoption of 3D printing that he was able to rescue the business. And today it is a thriving business in Youngstown. It has the old line foundry, but it also has the 3D printing aspect of it. So each one of these places has its own tech cluster that is going strong. Pittsburgh is, Carnegie Mellon, right? AI, robotics, very strong in those areas. And so you've seen Pittsburgh come up strong in those areas too. A lot of startups in Pittsburgh around AI and robotics. Same thing in these other places. Indianapolis. SaaS. How many people know what SaaS is? Okay, software as a service. It's like cloud computing, it's sort of. Okay. The reason Indianapolis got really big in SaaS is because Salesforce came in and bought one of their startups for a huge sum of money. And then those founders created their own venture studio in Indianapolis. And they have funded dozens of startups, all in SaaS. Can you believe it? All in software as a service. So, talk about specialization. Same thing, Dayton. I just flew in from Dayton, believe it or not, this morning, with a lot of maneuvering around to get my flight and connections and all that, which is why my voice is wrecked. But Dayton is about military applications. Why? Because the U.S. Air Force is there. It's a huge facility. And of course, aviation, because it's the birthplace or the home place of the Wright brothers in aviation. So that's a very strong theme in Dayton. That's their tech specialty. Detroit is about Industry 4.0, and they're trying very hard to move the needle on electric vehicles and mobility. So this is a story that still needs to be, watched. Cleveland, biotech. Why biotech? Because the Cleveland Clinic is in Cleveland. Okay, in Columbus, InsuranTech, Nationwide Insurance is in Columbus. It's become a service hub. It's basically every business that you look at today has a tech element to it. So you can put tech after everything: InsuranTech, space tech, clean tech, AI tech. So yes. Anyhow, you get the point. This person here has started up his business in Dayton, and he's selling to the military. And he's licensed technology from the Air Force and got the business up and going, and now he's selling back to the military. So that's a real success story out of Dayton. Here's all the things that I think the Heartland still needs. We need to have an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs or a Jeff Bezos in the Heartland. We don't have enough heroes yet. Who can name one hero in the Heartland? Who is it? Come on. Nobody?
Judy Faulkner.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one, yeah. Yeah, and she did it very early on, too. So that's a great one. But I don't think she's that well known.
Very private.
She's very private, right? Yeah. Well, I actually want to get out there tomorrow and see the headquarters, because I've heard it's really over the top. We need to change the mindset to more bold thinking and visionary thinking, and we need more accelerators, mentors. You know, one of the things I did in doing the research for the book is I visited all these accelerators, and each city has its own. Like in Cincinnati, it's called Centrifuge. In Columbus, it's called Rev4. In Cleveland, it's called Jumpstart, and so on. All of them have their own formula for accelerating and getting startups to scale up. So one of the big issues is, I understand, that the Epic place, one of the reasons it has such a dramatic headquarters is because they're trying to not only attract people, but retain people. They want to make it fun to work there. So that's an issue for the Heartland, is attracting talent. You know, low cost of living is not enough. You've got to have that tech buzz. How many people know about the tech buzz? Like, you can feel it. If you go to MIT campus, you can just feel the buzz. I love that. So I felt it a little bit here today, but I haven't been here long enough today. I just flew in at noon. So, okay, what do we have to do? We have to narrow the opportunity gap. We've got to get more venture capital spending in. Definitely. Now, for years, Silicon Valley and Boston and New York have monopolized the venture capital spending, and they've had a lot of success, which is why there continues to be more venture capital spending. You know, success breeds success. So, but now you're starting to see some of these VCs who are more forward-looking, who are willing to look beyond their 30-mile radius in Silicon Valley, begin to look at what's happening here in the Heartland, because there have been some stories about it, and of course my book has helped, I think, somewhat to open people's eyes to, you know, this overlooked area, a place that has been considered flyover zone. So we need this to continue, and we need a Sandhill Road. That one of the issues in the Heartland is there's no central Sandhill Road. It's all by city and state. Sandhill Road feeds the United States. It's not just California. It's not just Silicon Valley. It feeds the nation, and it's fed a lot of international startups too. But we don't have that in the Heartland, and we need that to get to the next level. How many people want to get to the next level? Do you guys care? It's a big issue, right? Yeah. Okay, so we are seeing growth, and I document that in the book. And I even found a Sandhill Road in my home state. The photo is here somewhere. I'll get to it in a minute, or maybe I already bypassed it. But okay, so a nod to the local culture. Yeah, Madison. You've got a lot of pluses here. I can see it. You know, the streets are clean. There's activity. There's people exchanging ideas. They're talking about PhDs. They're talking about I'm like, wow, okay. And I just came from other places that are considered Rust Belt. That was not the talk. Believe me, that's not the talk. The talk is, well, we used to have this and we used to have that. And I think, okay, well, what are you working on now? And I always ask that question, what are you working on now? So What do you guys, you can tell me what you're working on now. But these are all the factors that I think lead to a Heartland hub to flourish. And I think Madison scores high on all of these things. So in my book, I did not try to just do one technology. I covered many types of technologies because the Heartland has all of these. It's really involved in hard tech, not soft tech, but hard tech. So it's very much tied to the manufacturing past. It's past, and it's building upon that to a certain degree. So it's not going to be that software, AI hub that Silicon Valley is. It probably won't be that. It'll have its own more industrialized manufacturing smart technology like IoT, like 3D printing, like electric vehicles, things that tie in with this manufacturing past. And that's what I saw a lot in doing the research for the book, and I tried to paint the landscape that is all kinds of entrepreneurs who are getting going. And they're all ages and all races. This woman is in Flint. She's was a fashion person in New York City. She left New York City and started a business in Flint, right in downtown Flint, recycling plastics from water bottles that had been disposed of during the water crisis in Flint. So that's a really remarkable story. And then this guy in Pittsburgh, I mean, he's quoted in my book about how hard it's been for him as a minority to be recognized as somebody that could actually scale up a startup. I mean, he talked to me very frankly. So he's very much in the book, and he's developed a parking app that he's a Carnegie Mellon grad. He's developed a parking app, and his office, his headquarters, is in the worst part of Pittsburgh, next to the last steel mill in Pittsburgh. It's a town called Braddock. It is really bad there. But that's where he's based. And I like that. I like that grit. I like people who are willing to go against the grain. So I highlighted him. Software development in Dayton, that guy is again, selling to the military and selling on cyberspace stuff, in cyberspace intelligence, because he's in Dayton and they need that. Okay, so I'm gonna just take you through a couple more photos which illustrate the past and the future. And again, that's my hometown, Anchor, Hocking, a glass town, Lancaster, Ohio. There used to be 2 glass factories in town from Anchor, Hocking, and a couple other glass factories too, but they all went, except there's one left, which is that one. Okay, so I highlight that. But what's the future for Lancaster? Well, I think the future for Lancaster is to be a suburb of Columbus and to be a new data center place for Google, because Google's moving in. Anyhow, in Buffalo, grain elevators, they're still there, 20 of them. They're not even in use. Amazing. There's the steel plant that's still operating in Pittsburgh. In Flint, is very active there. There's a lot of traffic here in Madison, but there's not a lot of traffic in Flint right now. So Flint was Buick City, right? Buick, they made Buicks. And the Buick complex, it's down, it's gone. And in its place are some entrepreneurs who are trying to get going with the help of people who are talent champions, which I'm gonna highlight in a minute, because I think talent champions are a really important ingredient for this rescue strategy for the Heartland. This is very near my hometown in Lancaster, near Columbus. And one of them is the Intel factory, the semiconductor facility in Albany, New York. It's only 30 miles from my hometown. I could drive up Route 37 and get there. And whenever I go back to my visit family or on the book tour, I always go there and check out what's going on. So that is in the early days of the Intel plant. You cannot see it from the Route 70. You've got to be like me and go down dirt roads and find it. So I did that. This one over here is the Google data center in Lancaster on farmland. I couldn't believe it when I heard that Google was building a data center in my hometown. Wow, on farmland. So there goes the farmland. I'm a little sentimental about that. Okay, Youngstown, people like this guy, a champion for 3D manufacturing at Youngstown Business Incubator. Advanced Manufacturing Lab. They do all this prototyping there. It's an amazing place. If you haven't been there, you really ought to go. In Portsmouth, Ohio, this fellow, I wrote quite a bit about him because he's got a recycling facility in southern Ohio in the worst part where the opioid addiction crisis has existed. And he is from Portsmouth. And actually, we actually had some common ties way back going family. So when I found out about him and I interviewed him on site there, but that was even earlier, before they actually built this. They have actually built this now on the Ohio River banks in Scioto County, which is a desperate place. Okay, they need innovation. And that story is really interesting because what they did is they licensed technology from P&G, nearby P&G. So that's a strategy. Okay, Cincinnati, Astrobotic, aerospace, space tech. What is this crazy guy doing? He's looking for water on the moon. You can read about him in the book. Astrobotic, Carnegie Mellon grad, and mentored by Mr. AI, Red Whitaker. If you don't, does anybody know who Red Whitaker is? Like he's famous in the AI and the energy field. He's the guy, remember they had that race across the United States and in new, he knows, in new kinds of vehicles, new energy-powered vehicles. And so he, was doing that every year and they won. He also was one of the people who got 3 Mile Island cleaned up. 3 Mile Island, the nuclear power disaster. So, okay, well, we skipped ahead. Okay, Lordstown, Ohio has been in the news. It continues to be in the news. Electric vehicle pickups. You would think that this would be kind of an easy thing to do, but, particularly since he bought a former GM plant that was abandoned, and all these workers, 5,000 workers lost their jobs, and then he bought the factory, and then all the facility, all the equipment was still in there. All the cranes, all the stamping, all the tooling, everything was still in this plant. I toured it with him.
Is that Rivian?
Yes, the Rivian. If you've been reading about the Rivian, now this guy, this maverick entrepreneur has bought again the company, and God knows what he's going to do with it. But it has had a very checkered history, with Foxconn coming in from Taiwan and investing in it, and then a big dispute over how much money and whether the stock was going to go up and this and that. That's all in the book, and it continues to be an interesting series of events. But this guy is some very maverick entrepreneur, like somebody I would meet in China. I really felt like he had the guts to do stuff in a big, bold way, even though he's failed, basically. He's failed pretty much so far, but we'll see. Anyhow, another interesting thing is just going to these places, which I talked about, have the tech specialization in West Virginia. The Rockefeller Neurological Center is working on brain surgery, working on amnesia, which I've got right now, so this is in Appalachia Hills. There's hope. The Rockefeller money went in. At Cleveland Clinic, of course, there's a lot of hope there, and a lot of research, which I document in the book. I interviewed many of the scientists and what they're working on and how they're investing. And that was really, I spent a day there. It was really a day and a half there. It was really fascinating. So, and then I mentioned that the people that I interviewed, this is really, okay, I'm running out of time. Okay, fun part. Albert Ratner, Mr. Cleveland, a change maker for Cleveland. Dave Mawani is Carnegie Mellon, a change maker there. Phil Hagerman in Flint. You can read all about them in the book. And mayors. Mayors can make a huge difference. I met a whole bunch of mayors, and they're also in the book, and I've done events with all of them since then, since the book came out. So you can see them here. Lancaster, Milwaukee, Dayton, Flint, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Okay. I'm almost done. Okay, what do we need? What do we need? We need to reverse the culture of diminished expectations. It's not just me saying that. Believe it or not, somebody I quoted said that that's the big problem. We have a culture, maybe not here in Madison, but the Rust Belt still has it. And so we've got to address all these issues in order for the Heartland to take off again. So, okay, I'm sorry I ran over time, but please, yes, if you have a quick question,
Yes.
Sure.
Thought of another hero, Kevin Conroy of Exact Sciences.
Oh, yeah.
Cologuard, and they're doing other pancreatic cancer
Okay.
testing.
Okay. That's good, yeah. So if you have a financial success, even better. Right, yes.
I would just say we've seen it in Madison, the change with Epic and all other
Sure.
kind of biotech. It's changed the city.
Right.
So we're experiencing it and we're seeing it firsthand. We're hearing all about how this innovation is coming and we have the university, which I know helps, but yeah, we're definitely living it right now. We're seeing it happening for our
Yeah, no, I feel it here. I do feel it here, and I see all the construction too. Anyone else? One last question.
Do you see more growth from publicly held companies? I mean,
Well,
Epic's private,
right.
so I'm just wondering if there's a
Well,
correlation between.
There's been a few that have gone public, actually out of Columbus area. Root Insurance, unfortunately, it pretty much failed after it went public. So the track record of going public hasn't been that great. It's been better to be acquired. The acquisition story has yielded better results.
The Biden administration had all these bills that they passed
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
When do you think that's really gonna hit the fan?
Well, they're working on it now, doling it out. Yeah, and you know what? The cities in the states are competing for it. So that's going on right now. And I don't know, but in my areas, I've seen Biden infrastructure signs up, right? You probably have them here too. But yeah, that's a real positive, and we need it. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I guess I'm going to go outside and sign some books. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that riveting talk, and please feel free to go outside. Books are for sale, and you'll be doing a signing right outside.
Yes,
So
I'll do
thank you all for being here.
I'll do the signing with my Sharpie, and I'll personalize it if you want.